Ja Morant has been on an absolute tear to start this season. Through 5 games, he's averaging just under 33 points, which has been enough to get his team to a 4-1 record without their full roster, and himself a first place spot on NBA.com's first official MVP ladder. But just how good is he right now? What is it that makes him so unstoppable, and can he actually win an NBA MVP? When you hear the name Ja Morant, it's pretty likely that you picture his high-flying, acrobatic finishes. Despite standing just 6'3", he can get above the rim and over rim protectors without much trouble, boasting an explosive 44-inch vertical that almost looks like he's springing off a trampoline. He can bring the hammer down with power, as we've seen through his countless highlight reels, but his hang time also allows him to just kind of float in the air and find the best release angle. Sometimes it even looks like he first leaves the ground and then decides how he's going to finish, and when suspended in the air like this, his body control is one of one. He's somewhat of a mid-air contortionist, bending, folding, and twisting his frame at every angle possible to sneak through tiny pockets, all while maintaining perfect balance. You'll notice that when he takes off into traffic, he likes to lead with his body to force that initial contact while holding the ball at an unobtainable angle to protect it from shot blockers. Notice how he has a free runway into Andre Drummond, who's waiting under the basket, but instead of avoiding him and looking for a more open opportunity, he jumps horizontally straight into the center of Drummond's body while shielding the ball in a position where he can still get it up and in. This time, Zubac is in a seemingly perfect position to turn away the drive until Ja takes off from outside the paint and uses his upper body to initiate that contact. Notice how high and far back he holds the ball, as he knows he'll remain in the air longer than his defender, and as soon as he gets a decent look at the rim, it's 2 points. His willingness to finish through and even seek out contact earns him a great deal of trips to the line. At 10.5 free throw attempts every 100 possessions, he ranked 7th in the NBA among all qualifying players last season, and through 5 games this year, that number's been up to over 14. Most of his damage on the interior, though, comes as a result of his masterful touch. There's not a type of layup or angle he's not comfortable going to, using tons of scoops, reverses, and up and unders where he's just as effective with his offhand and adjusts his shot at will. It's almost like he audibles while in mid-air, moving the ball to an entirely different spot before releasing it to score through traffic, here jumping into one of the league's premier rim protectors in Anthony Davis and starting with the ball high, before bringing it down to his waist and releasing it low with a scoop off the glass. His overall package as a finisher is something we really haven't seen from someone of his size, and while converting is a huge part of the equation, it's not as valuable if the opportunities aren't consistently presenting themselves. Of course, this doesn't apply to Ja, who's a masterful slasher and one of the best rim shot creators ever. His first step is lightning quick, and when paired with his elite handle, helps him blow by just about any defender in space. His go-to is a nasty hesitation, where he makes defenders bite before turning on the jets. Notice how he first pauses, then exaggerates the fake by dragging his foot as if he's about to pull up for a jumper, but instead darts into the paint for a reverse lay. He also loves using misdirections as a way to get downhill and build up steam, almost looking like a running back as he gets really low to the ground and plants his feet before changing directions on a whim and leaving his man in the dust. You'll see the same when going to his lethal crossover, pushing the boundaries of what a carry actually is when transferring the ball from one hand to the other, and he'll fake that by throwing in and outs and exploding in the opposite direction. When he's feeling real creative, he'll even toss in some ferocious spins and half spins, again showing off that insane balance. In tighter quarters, he likes to squeeze through gaps by going behind his back or between the legs, keeping it on a string despite having so much length. This rounds out a versatile dribbling game that, when paired with his agility, allows him to throw together some truly vicious combinations, and while he does do a great job of using that explosive handle to get all the way to the rim, his attack is still very methodical. He's constantly varying his strides, and because of that length, he's able to step into space and carve out angles. His sense of directionality is unmatched, having a 360-degree radius that presents an element of unpredictability, because you just never know when he'll create a pathway to the basket out of thin air. On this one, he comes off a screen and is met at the level. He uses that tight behind the back to split between the two and is met with more help just below the free throw line. He quickly stutters as to not show where he wants to go until the last moment, where he takes one giant stride around, leaving nobody left to stop him from scoring. He has tons of different gathers in these spots, going to euros, step throughs across the lane, and even occasionally spinning as he collects for the finish. He often uses his offhand to push whoever's in front of him as he loads up, and while he's not super strong, he builds up enough downhill momentum to move smaller guys around. Here he starts his drive with that misdirection dribble that helps him build up steam, initiates contact with that off shoulder to push Strus out of position before slamming the brakes for a free one. That ability to change speeds makes him a nightmarish cover. He decelerates just as fast as he bursts out, stopping and going on a dime. That lethal push crossover makes Bledsoe bite on the wrong side of the screen, putting Ja in a high-speed position with just a recovering big standing in his way. Notice how long his strides are as he plants his feet, comes to a screeching halt, and steps right around for a layup. This time, he's again met with two right at the level, splits them like it's nothing, and when his dart to the left gets cut off, he quickly audibles by changing directions while slowing down, making it look too easy. Even when he picks up his dribble in deep like this, he's still a huge threat. If there are any open windows, he'll use that length to just step through them, throwing in some up fakes and pivots to earn himself a bit more room. He's also comfortable spinning back for short mid-range jumpers when necessary, which is a testament to the growth of his in-between game. And when I say in-between, I mean it literally. He's great at getting defenders on his backside or hip and blocking their recovery path to put them in jail. From this position, he'll start somewhat of a second attack, this time much closer to the basket, probing with a live dribble as he hunts for angles. This is where you'll see him make great use of the floater, often cutting or sidestepping into them and getting really high on the release to get it over the top of the defense. He takes these at great volume, and although his shot making is already among the best, there's still some room to sharpen up the accuracy, as there is with his mid-range pull-up game. If utilized correctly, this can be a phenomenal counter for the rare occurrence that he isn't actually able to get deep in the paint, and although in limited sample, to start out this season, he's been going to it successfully for a decent chunk of his scoring. Most of these opportunities come in the pick and roll, as is the case with his creation as a whole. He has a massive screener next to him in Steven Adams that can bump point of attack defenders out of position on almost every single possession, and due to that threat of penetration, opposing bigs are forced to play high. There, they just can't contain him in space. Switching creates an automatic mismatch, and he splits doubles with ease. He also loves to reject the screen and throw crossovers in the opposite direction to get downhill, where he'll use any space left between him and the help as a launch pad to the rim. Notice how when this screen comes, Paul George comes up to the level. Ja hesitates and rejects it to easily get around man, and when the help can't rotate fast enough to cut off that space, he takes off for an effortless finish. Many of these attacks come off of movement, running off of screens or cutting to the ball, and they usually have a big controlling the middle of the floor for easy two-man actions and handoffs. As a result, he's able to get deep into the heart of the defense seemingly whenever he wants, and because of how good he is at scoring once he's there, at 16.6 points per game in the paint, he became the first guard to lead the entire league since it started being tracked all the way back in 1997. Across the board, his metrics as a finisher look absolutely impeccable, both generating and making shots at the rim at a near league best level, only really lacking in assist rates. This doesn't mean that he's incapable of making plays for others or struggles with tunnel vision, just that when he's slashing, more often than not he's looking to score. Most of his playmaking is actually done on the perimeter, but before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to Basketball Index for helping with this analysis and the making of this video. If you're not familiar with the site, they provide tons of statistical measurements, tools, and easily accessible graphics to further guide your understanding of the sport. I earlier mentioned quite a few of their talent grades, and through their player profiles tab, I can easily compare them to other players around the league. Using Ja Morant's finishing as an example, on this page I'm presented with various metrics detailing his ability to create and make these shots, along with how he stacks up against his peers. This is just one of the many useful tools found on the site that help guide me and many others through their analysis, and by signing up with the code VENUE30, you can get 30% off your first month subscription. I'll leave a link in the description below for anyone interested in signing up, and with that being said, let's take a look at Ja Morant's playmaking. The threat of his attack bends the defense into pre-rotating before ever actually initiating anything, allowing him to pick it apart from outside. Sometimes it's just simple kick assists that come from aggressive gapping or double teams, like here where Fournier roams all the way from the corner to protect the nail without enough time to recover on the closeout. There's also a lot of advanced passing here too though. He has a ton of range and velocity in his deliveries, which allows him to punish movement from pretty much anywhere on the court, using jump passes to get above the defense and make up for a lack of height. He adds some versatility as well due to how comfortable he is using his offhand to make these finds, and he loves to fake these three-point assists to move help away from the paint for easier offense at the rim. On this one, he draws two off the screen, and he's focused on how Covington's going to react as he makes his decision. When he looks above the break at a shooter as he loads up for a pass, Rocco hesitates just long enough for Ja to fire one down low. Even something as classic as a pass fake can work in these situations. This time it's Dwight Powell who Ja is focused on manipulating, and when he gets him to bite on the corner shooter, that creates an easy entry to Steven Adams with a mismatch. He's also a very strong lob passer, both to rollers and backdoor cutters, which is his go-to when pushing the pace. Though the assist rates aren't particularly great, he does still have some really nice traits as a downhill playmaker. He's especially good at dumping it off or laying it down on the interior, where he can leverage the threat of his finishing to pull paint defenders towards him and open up those opportunities. Here he draws a switch that forces extra attention. Still, he's able to get both feet in the paint where all eyes are on him. He leaves the floor as if he's going to a floater, then looks to the corner as if he's instead kicking it out, which sends LeBron into recovery just to leave it for a wide open dunk. Later in that same game, he did it again, getting downhill and taking off straight into Howard in a seeming attempt at finishing vertically and laying it down for a free 2 points. He can still do the whole drive and kick thing as well, collapsing the defense and freeing up shooters all around the perimeter. It's not just teammates that his slashing threat opens up either, because the main goal when defending him is to never let him get anywhere near the basket. He gets a fair amount of wide open jumpers. Although this hasn't been his strong suit, he's a pretty decent pull-up three-point shooter, especially when given this much space, has some range, and occasionally goes on these runs where he catches fire and cannot be stopped. There's also some value away from the ball, where he's a pretty high-level cutter due to his agility, sharp movement, and explosive finishing, sometimes even positioning himself for offensive rebounds and putbacks. Additionally, he's elite in the open floor. He's arguably the fastest player in the sport and uses the same techniques as his masterful driving game, with cuts, crossovers, and long gathers, while his athleticism makes him a walking highlight reel. All in all, what you have is a solidified offensive superstar who continues to get better with every single game he plays. Memphis is building something special with the young talent they have around him and pieces that fit the puzzle to a T. And in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before the Grizzlies take the league by storm, and we're potentially talking about Ja as a league MVP. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website, podcast, and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Ja Morant and just how good you believe he is. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.